All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to our webinar on generative AI. We want to empower knowledge worker. This is the main reason for us to get involved in generative AI. Let me tell you a little bit about why and where I come from. Yeah. So my name is Stefan. I'm the CEO and founder of System in Motion. And from my profile, you need to remember basically only one thing, that I graduated in 1993 with a master's degree in artificial intelligence. So this is a topic that I've been working on for more than 30 years. It's not a topic that I started to look at only 6 months ago, like many so-called experts in AI. As I graduated in artificial intelligence and computer science, I discovered that I was good at it, and I got hired by corporate companies. And the higher I got into those hierarchy, the less and less I was using my talent in computer, my talent in computer science. And I realized that most of the knowledge worker, people who work with their brains, don't get to really leverage their talent and don't get to really leverage their knowledge once they work inside large organization. And the further I got into, and the higher I got into those organizations, the more obvious it was to me that most of the corporate workers, they're lost in what I call the EMP trap. E stands for email, meeting, and PowerPoint. And most people in those organizations, they spend most of their time in email, meetings, and creating or looking at PowerPoints. But everybody has a talent, everybody has a passion. So some people work in marketing, some people work in finance, some people work in human resources, but they don't all get to really experience and really leverage what their passion is. No. And we think that today with generative AI, we can give back that power to knowledge workers to really live their passion in their organization. And we really believe that companies can and should invest into this technology so they can get the best of people that were motivated to work for them. And we're not alone to think that. That man, Peter Drucker, who is the grandfather of modern management, he invented actually the concept of professional manager. He wrote many business books. Arguably, he was the first one to really write business books. And in 1999, he published a business book that one can foretelling what the 21st century would be. And he prophesied that the 21st century would be the age of productivity for knowledge worker. And he prophesied that companies who know how to leverage that productivity will be the winner, and that a 21st century company is giving the power to their 21st century employees, knowledge worker, to really embrace technology and really experience a jump into productivity. In the same book, he explained that the 20th century was all about productivity for manual workers, people who work with their hands versus people who work with their brains, people who were producing objects, working with the physical object, versus people who are working with knowledge workers who are working with information, knowledge, and using their brains more than their hands. So to give you an example of how powerful generative AI is and how it fits into that overall arching theme of empowering and of productivity, Amazon in their self-publishing platform, Kindle, discovered a few months ago that they had a problem. They saw a very, very big spike in the number of books that were self-published on the platform. So they want a large inventory, they want a lot of books, but they also acknowledge that if too many of those books have been generated by AI, the real books written by humans who really crafted every word are going to be lost in an ocean of generated books. So they decided that they wanted to put a limit. And they decided to put a limit in the number of books that any single self-publisher would publish every day. And they decided that that limit would be 3 books per day. You can check, you have the URL at the bottom. This is a true information that we found on multiple sources. Of course, it's ridiculous to publish more than 3 books per day. Nobody can really do that. But the assumption by Amazon putting this limit is that some people were actually producing and delivering more than 3 books per day. And that gives you an idea of the level of productivity that generative AI can have for people who know their trade, for people who know their craft. So people using self-publishing platforms, these people, they know how to publish books. So they have a talent. They have a craft for copywriting. They know how to manage ideas, they know how to outline a book, they know how to design a cover, and they know how to push that. So all these skills are already there. But with generative AI, they can accelerate every single step of a self-publishing process, which leads them to publish basically more than 3 books per day, which Amazon doesn't allow them, unfortunately, to do anymore. Before we go any further, I'd like to clarify a few misconceptions, because we're going to talk a lot about generative AI and more particularly the large language model, the most famous one being GPT. It's far from being the only one on the market, but everybody understands what it is, and most people have already played with it. So first misconception, very common about GPT, is that it's a search engine, that it has the ability to search the internet. Now, the model by itself, GPT, doesn't have that ability. Now, more and more of the models are what we call multimodal. So this capability is being integrated into most of the LLMs, but this is not a core feature of large language model. So it's very important to understand when you choose to use one technology, for example, GPT or Gemini or Kimi. It's very important to understand, does it have the ability to go and look up the internet for real-time information? Because if it doesn't, it's limited by its training set, and it's limited by the last time that the model was trained. So large language model by itself doesn't have the ability. More and more of those models are being enhanced and have that ability. The second one is that large language model know everything. And this assumption comes from a very logical assumption that because they were trained with most of human knowledge in many different languages, that those models somehow have retained the information, and that there are factual information stored into the model. Again, that is not true for large language model. It is true when they are combined with knowledge management base or when they are combined with search engine. So again, whenever you use a technology, very important to understand which one has which capabilities, because they are far from being equal. And finally, creativity is a big debate. Even internally at System in Motion, we have that debate regularly. Are language models truly creative? What everybody agrees is that they can be involved in creative processes. But my personal feeling and my personal experience is whenever somebody tells me they are creative, I always see the creativity coming from this side of the keyboard. I always see the creativity coming from the human. And some of the creativity that is attributed to the AI is usually controlled by the human who is in front of the keyboard. And as a proof, when LLMs are left by themselves to devise social media posts, they're usually not that creative, and the quality is usually average. So the good news is that we still need humans in the process. Yeah. A brief history of natural language processing. So natural language processing is one branch of artificial intelligence. It's a sub-branch of machine learning, and then there's another sub-branch of neural networks. So natural language processing has been a goal for a long time. And that quest for the ability for computer to manipulate language in a way that seems that seems to reflect intelligence dates all the way back from the 1950s. So you have a picture here of a gentleman called Alan Turing, who was one of the father of computing. He was involved in the very early days computer design and operation. And then Turing was thinking about the idea of intelligence. As soon as computers were able to do addition, subtraction, and division faster than humans, humans saw themselves being outpaced by computers. And that was true already in 1950. And somehow humans have been predicting intelligent computers and computer replacing humans in the next 10 years, constantly for the last 70 years. Yeah. So Turing asked that question, like, one day computers will be intelligent. How are we going to know we passed that threshold? And he designed what is known to be the Turing test after his name. He said, if I'm chatting with an entity through a screen and a keyboard, and on the other side, I don't know if it's a computer or a human, I cannot kind of trip them. And if it's actually a computer on the other side of that chat, that means the computer is really intelligent. And we'll get back to that notion later about the very deep link that we all connect as humans between the ability to manipulate language and the underlying intelligence. And then people set out to work immediately. So in the 1960, I think it was 1965, first program came back called ELIZA. And that program was designed to manipulate language. And it was designed as a chat, just like Turing has designed. So you would ask question to Eliza, and Eliza will ask question in return. Eliza would use some of the words of the human user. So if you ask a question or if you talk about a car, about a house, then somehow Eliza was able to craft an English sentence that would include a house or include a car and have some kind of discussion. And it was designed to be a virtual therapist. It was not very good, but it was the first attempt, and it failed the Turing test because after a few question and answer, humans were able to say this is a computer program. And then the techniques that were used were programming languages, rudimental programming languages, the one that used in the 1960s, and most importantly, you had to code the language. You had to explain to the computer, okay, in an English sentence, you have a subject, you have a verb, this is an article, this is an adjective, this is an adverb. So there was a necessity to code the language, to codify the language. And basically from the 60s to the late 2010, the same technique were just used and refined. So more advanced computing power, more complex programming, but still that necessity to explain what is language to the computer and code representation of the language. And then in 2016, 17, when OpenAI started, they decided a completely different approach. They said this time, we are not going to teach the computer how language is structured. We're going to let the computer learn by itself. So using artificial intelligence, using neural networks, OpenAI started to train a first model that was quite bad. The first GPTs were really not good, and nobody thought it was possible. So OpenAI was kind of frowned upon in the startup industry until they managed to create GPT-3 and then 3.5 and set it wide on the market. So the true revolution that OpenAI started and the true breakthrough in large language model is that we don't need to explain the language. We don't need a linguist to analyze the language, explain, code, and run the program. Now, from very, very large set of example, large language model can be trained and figure out by themselves not only one language, several. Whenever you try GPT or other languages in English, in Chinese, Spanish, or French, you know that these languages don't have one language ability. They have model 10, 20, 30 different languages in a single model. So how does it work? So imagine all of us, imagine that I give you that sentence, the students open there. And we actually did that in training on Monday. If I give you the beginning of a sentence and I ask you to imagine what are the next words, you can come out with 3, 4, 5 words. If I ask all of you to put that in the chat, we could make statistics about what is the most likely word in this sentence. And every time we do that exercise in training, we come out with the most common word being books. So the common wisdom is that the most likely word in a sentence the students open there, the most probable next word is books, and then it's laptops, and then it's eyes, and then it's mouse. This is basically the only thing that GPT and other LLMs are doing. Based on the beginning of a sentence, they can guess the most likely next word. And then once you know that it's books, you can say the students open their books and figure out what is the next word, probably at page 25 or at page 10. Yeah. So word by word, the large language model is able to determine what's the most likely next word, next word, next word, next word, next word. And that's the only thing. So earlier, when I was telling you that large language model don't have any knowledge, this is the reason why. This is because the internal representation of the LLM is only the likelihood of a word, of the next word coming in. And it's not factual. So if I ask, what is the capital of China? The answer will be Beijing. It's not because it's factual. It's because whenever in a text you have China capital, then Beijing is not far. So these three words are very, very often put together. So this is very important to understand because that explains something I will explain just in a few minutes. That explains why sometimes you get answers from a large language model that are factually wrong because it's not part of the model. It's not part of the model to check accuracy or check that something is factual. The model is just there to find what is the most likely word, next word in a sentence, and next word, next word, next word, next word, and so on. Yeah. So quite important, although it's a highly simplified model, it's quite important to understand how it works, what works, and what doesn't work. So that can explain why some of the things are not really working with LLMs. So as I just explained, you cannot expect large language model to give you something that is factual. You know, there are no facts that are being stored, only statistics, only likelihood of seeing a word in a sentence. So hallucination, I mentioned it briefly. What is an hallucination? An hallucination happens when you ask a question to a large language model that is very specific. So maybe it's specific to your industry, maybe it's specific to a very narrow field of expertise. And then the answer is not obvious. Because the large language model have been trained to make the user happy, GPT must answer. GPT must find an answer, and it has been trained to craft answers that look nice. So with a lot of authority and with a lot of, I would say, craft, the LLM will come out with a language that can be factually completely wrong. And this is what we call an hallucination. But again, because there is no sanity check, because there is no check that the answer is correct, the user has no way to figure out, is it true or is it wrong? Of course, people notice their hallucination because sometimes you ask a question where you have the answer and you are able to determine that it's right or it's wrong. Yeah. So to avoid hallucination, there are two things that are very important. Number one, do not use GPT for things that you don't understand and you don't have knowledge, because you're at risk of doing something that is factually wrong. And the second one is to always craft prompts, making sure the context is all there, making sure that the model doesn't need to create something, to create a piece of information that is missing. So somehow, to avoid hallucination, you must give the model all the information needed to properly process the question. Yeah. Large language model always respond, they never change the topic. So when humans are discussing, sometime you will change the topic, say, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you that. This will never happen with a large language model because it's using the most likely next word in a sentence. What is most likely is to stay on topic. Large language models don't have their own styles, but they are able to imitate and they are able to simulate a lot of styles, either an abstract style that you describe, but also most of the famous writers are there in the model. And this ability to mimic and imitate different styles, different roles, different people is actually quite powerful in content generation. It cannot commit, it cannot create, show interest. And finally, the last one, identify safe to eat mushrooms. Somebody created with generative AI a safe to eat mushroom guide, and it was full of mistakes, and it's really not a good idea. So you may think, all right, that with all those limitations, can we really use LLMs, and should we really try to use GPT? Yes, we should, because there are many use cases. So if you scan the QR code or you click on the link that Jenny is going to post in the chat group, and you give us your email, we're going to send you a list of 250 use cases. We could have put more in that white paper, but that was enough, we think, and that's enough. Very useful for many people to go at. So in terms of strategy, being the CEO of the company, I use GPT a lot for strategy, to brainstorm new ideas, to compare different options, different scenarios. We use it a lot in sales to design life cycle for our customers, to personalize sales activity, generate proposal, review proposal. We use it also sometimes to simulate discussion. So as I said earlier, you can ask GPT to act as your customer. That becomes a training agent for your salespeople. But you also can ask GPT to become a salesperson, in which case you have more ideas. You can generate more ideas on how to combat objections when your customers are coming at you. Our HR is using it a lot. So everybody has tried and everybody has done a job description, we go way further than that. We do skill sets, we do evaluation, interview scripts, performance analysis, planning, performance review. Most of the HR tasks are heavy on text and can be really optimized. We do workshop facilitation. We can record a workshop, do a transcript, and do meeting notes automatically. Knowledge management. So I'll go a little bit deeper into knowledge management in a few minutes. Marketing, so all the content creation, pictures, not using GPT, but using DALL-E, creating marketing content, generating white paper, I'll show you an example. And now video image generation is coming up quite strong. Analysis, finance, financial analysis, even designing new financial processes that can help and that can accelerate all of this. And finally, on the legal side, so we don't use GPT to generate a contract from nothing. That doesn't work. I mean, the result is, I wouldn't trust the result. But we can use it to analyze discrepancies between different documents. We use it to understand what will be the risk of accepting a modification that a customer has asked us to put into a contract, removing a clause, adding a clause. So all these things can really accelerate. One very recent use case, one of our customers received 2 proposals for insurance from 2 different insurance companies. The documents were structured completely differently. And the only way for that customer to know what would be the differences would be to read the 2 70-page documents and one by one manually match the clauses and figure out the difference in coverage. We put the 2 documents in our large language model, actually in the knowledge management. We asked for the differences and they came out a short list of the 5 key differences between these 2 documents. So again, if you scan the QR code or you click on the link, you give us your email and you'll receive 250 use cases under these categories and way more. Yeah. So for anybody, for any knowledge worker to leverage the true power of generative AI, you need to have a certain level in what we call the art of prompt. Yeah. So a prompt is a set of instruction you give to a large language model like GPT, Kimi, or Gemini. Yeah. So as I explained earlier, you do it in natural language. So you can do it in English, you can do it in Chinese, in French, German, Russian, whatever language you feel comfortable with. And you are not using a programming language. So in the past, whenever we wanted to give instruction to a computer, you could use formula inside Excel, but when it gets a little bit more complicated, you had to write code. So maybe you had to write VBA if you were still in Excel, but then for bigger application, you had to use Java, Python, all those languages that were languages designed for computers. The true revolution of generative AI is now we can have full control of the computer. And we can get the computer to do things that are very sophisticated using a natural language. So the term natural language somehow means human language, the language that we all use and the language we feel comfortable with. But because we are giving instruction to a computer, we still need to structure the information. Yeah. Some of you may be using GPT and maybe you're just having a conversation with GPT, right? You are just having a chat with GPT. And we can't blame you because it's called ChatGPT. So you're having a chat with GPT. But this is not the most efficient way to get the computer to do exactly what you want. To get the computer to do exactly what you want, you have to structure it with the consciousness that you're talking to a computer. So we've designed a very simple framework into how you can make your prompts more efficient. We call it the CFC framework. CFC stands for context, format, and comment. And now you stop the chatting and now you are finally prompting with purpose. Yeah. So context is all the information you need to give to the large language model so that it will give you exactly what you need. Yeah. So first of all, as I explained earlier, this will protect you from hallucination because if all the context is here, the LLM will not need to make up something that is factually untrue. If you want to understand how deep your context needs to be, you can think of your LLM as being an intern coming into your company on Monday at 9 a.m. That person doesn't know they had interview, maybe they know a little bit about your company, But that's not the case for your LLM. Your LLM, when you open a new conversation in LLM, the LLM doesn't know who you are, doesn't know which company you work for, doesn't know which day it is, doesn't know the weather, doesn't know anything. It has a very strong command of language, but it doesn't have any context to start working. So you have to give all the context necessary for the LLM to give you the correct answer and to proceed with the task that you want it to do. If you want to know if your context is deep enough, you can ask yourself one simple question. Have I explained the why? When you start to give the LLM why this task is important to you, suddenly you get way better results. Next is the format. So CFC, context format command, doesn't necessarily need to be in this order. As long as you put all these elements into your prompt, you're going to get good results. So format is to help you. Format is what is the output you want? Is it an email? In which case, Generative AI can give you a completely formatted email, beginning, middle, and end. Do you want bullet points? How many bullet points you want? 5, 6, or 10? Do you want 100 words? Is it a blog post? Is it for Twitter? Is it X? Is it for LinkedIn? Is it for WeChat? All this, you put it in a format that will increase tremendously the chance of you just copy and pasting and having it exactly the way you want. And finally, the command, you have to be very, very clear into what the model should do. So let's look at a few examples to illustrate how that CFC framework works. So for example, this is a very bad prompt. Write a short story. There's really not much there to do. The output is completely unpredictable and most likely completely uninteresting. You also can think that if it's only three words, that's not good enough. But if you instead, if you give it a little bit of context, write a story about a boy who discovers an unexpected fortune. Now, suddenly you're giving a strong direction to where the story needs to go. And now it's going to be on topic. And now you start to have something interesting. You can make it, of course, way better, but at least there, the context gives a certain frame to a certain direction for the LLM to perform what you want, what you need. Next, this one is also bad. Write a summary of article on artificial intelligence. Doesn't give enough information, right? So the format will be very important in that case. If you want a blog post that is only 200 words, say it, just give it. Again, the machine is here to help you. You have to give it very specific instruction. It's going to be between 100 and 195 to 205, but at least you won't get 1,000 words or you won't get 20 words. You get something in the ballpark of what you want. And finally, so in this example, the prompt is here. So this prompt is kind of a template prompt where you're going to stick your own paragraph behind and ask it to rewrite. Now, what's going to happen in that case, if I say rewrite the paragraph and I copy and paste from my Word document, at best, I can imagine that it's going to fix the spelling mistakes and maybe some of the punctuation. Instead, I have to define in my command the style that I want. So rewrite the following paragraph to make it more concise and professional. Now, I will get something that I want, and I will get the style, the article to be rewritten in that style. Here is another example. So this one, create a post about strategy. It's very, very average. I mean, you can read it if you want, but there's not anything interesting in there. It's kind of a dictionary definition of what is strategy. Nobody can really use that. In your professional life, there's no use for that. Instead, if I'm saying that I want to create a LinkedIn post under 200 words about strategy for small business owner, now I get something interesting. Now I get something that I can use. I get something that I can use on LinkedIn. And again, you can notice that this one doesn't have a why. I can make it even better than saying, why do I need that post? I need that post because, for example, I'm running a small consultancy business that helps small business owner become better at strategy. Or I'm a coach. As a professional coach, help me to create that LinkedIn post so I can generate more leads. Now I'm getting into the why and I'm getting more context. As you can see at the top of this slide, so we show context format command in three lines with the title. This is more a pedagogic approach. So when we do training, this is how we show it so that the participants can structure their ideas. It actually works. I mean, if you put your prompt this way and if it helps you to make sure you have the structure, it's going to work. But if you want to be a bit more efficient, you can do what you have just under, where you can just type your prompt right away, like a normal sentence that you would put in a document. So that will already give you some very good results, but then you can make it even better. So you can make it even better going from the CFC framework to the ERCFC framework. So we're going to add 2 new elements into our framework to make it better. So we're adding a first element that is called examples. Sometimes it's easier to show an example than to explain what you want. So maybe you see a very nice blog post from one of your competitors, and you say, oh, I'd love to publish a blog post like this one. Guess what? You can take it as an example. You can give it as part of your prompt, and your prompt is not going to copy it. It's not going to plagiarize the article from your competitor. It's going to rewrite something that is going to be similar in structure, similar in tone, similar in vocabulary. So this is how you can use example. It saves you the time to really analyze what you want by just showing an example of what you want looks like. And by this example, this generative AI model are very good at pattern recognition. They will recognize the pattern and apply the pattern into a totally new and original piece. And the second element we're adding, moving from CFC to ERCFC, is a role. So the role is which humans do you want GPT to impersonate? So the role can be defined as an abstract role. So you want an expert with 20-year experience in B2B marketing, or you want a legal expert in the field of IP protection. You can go all in. It doesn't cost you more money to get GPT to impersonate somebody who has 20-year experience or 50-year experience in the field. So when you go into the role, imagine who's the best person in the world that can execute that task for you, and ask GPT to become that person. Of course, it's not becoming that person, but it's very good at imitating the style, the level of authority, the vocabulary, the structure. And if you have the same prompt, but you just change your role, you can try that at home, you will see that the result is going to be completely different. So one prompt from a marketing expert and the same prompt from a legal expert will give you completely different answers and completely different structure. So this is actually the second part of what we call the generative AI value stack. So these are the 5 levels of integration of AI into a company where we see companies building value. That's why we call it a value stack. So here we're looking at the second one. We're looking at use case, individual task, and using the art of prompt for people to become more efficient. But before we get there and before we get the full benefits of prompt, we have to solve an underlying problem that is knowledge management. So we go back at the basic, and we go back at companies that are generated and that have to manage more and more documents every day. It's an exponential growth of documents that are being produced in the world, and it's exponential growth of documents being produced and stored and exchanged by every company that does knowledge management, of course, that does knowledge work around the world. So quick definition of knowledge management. So it's the creation, sharing, usage, and management of knowledge. It of course involves also the retrieval of knowledge. But knowledge management has actually 4 critical issues that we see everywhere in every company. So the first one is hoarding. Because we have space and because digital storage is so cheap, most companies never clean up, and we just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate and accumulate documents. Most companies don't have knowledge management system. So I don't know what you're using here for people online. At System Emotion, we use SharePoint. And I recently discovered that there are 2 ways you can find information in SharePoint. The first one is you know where it is. And the second one is you know somebody who knows where it is. And there are cases where I create a document, I put it on SharePoint, it makes sense when I store it there, and then I can't find it. Yeah. So SharePoint in that regard is not really a knowledge management system. It's a very efficient collaborative storage system, but it doesn't really manage knowledge for me and for my colleagues. As a result, many employees feel overloaded. When you have so many documents, when you cannot find them, when you're not sure 100% that you're working on the latest version of the document, you can get a sense of overload. And finally, in every company, there are tacit knowledge. If somebody joins the company first day onboarding and training, you're going to give them a bunch of knowledge about processes, who's doing what, who are our core customers. I mean, there's going to be a ton of information exchange, and the rest will be accessible in the digital space, no matter if it's SharePoint or Google Drive or whatever. But there's a lot of knowledge in every company that is not stored anywhere. Everybody knows about it, but it's not stored anywhere. And all this information that is exchanged in meetings, at the coffee machine or at the water cooler, all this information are not stored everywhere and cannot be leveraged. And of course, we cannot leverage them with generative AI, because if it's only in people's brain, we can't do anything about it. So at the core of the knowledge management issue, we see a dilemma. Machines love information to be stored in boxes. We usually call it a database. Machine loves things to be separated in those boxes, but humans hate that. Humans like story. The whole presentation since I started has been a story. I've been telling you a story. I've been telling you small stories inside that big story. And everything we do, and anytime we want to manage information, we use story, because that's the most efficient way. Because storytelling started several thousand years ago in the caves. Yeah. So we don't believe we can change people. So we believe that people will still be more efficient at sharing, absorbing, and teaching through storytelling. So we want to leave the humans alone. And instead, we're set up on a mission to use generative AI so that the machine can read those stories and can make sense of those stories and can classify them, and then can treat them as if they were stored in a database. Yeah. So in order to do, so this is going to be a very, very powerful tool, because it's going to solve the hoarding problem. It's going to help classify, organize, curate, and maybe even clean older version. If we look further down the road, whenever a human wants to store a document in a storage, the generative AI should be able to say, no, don't put it there, put it here. It's more logical. And then, is this document replacing that document? In which case, it will just make it a new version of the same document and not having the same document stored twice in two different places. We believe generative AI, and we've already have a very good success with our early developments. They can really find information semantically. The reason you cannot find information in your SharePoint is because it's using keyword search. With generative AI, we can really find a document based on its meaning, based on the semantic. So for example, if you look for a document that is called planning, if it's called project plan, SharePoint will not find it. But generative AI can understand that planning, schedule, project plan are all part of the same semantic bubble. And then if you use one of these three, it will be synonymous, and generative AI can solve that problem. Overload, generative AI can summarize document. It's actually very, very good at summarizing document. So whenever you're looking into a large knowledge base, you can ask generative AI to summarize the top 5 key points. In which case you don't have overload, because you only have access to what you need. Same way as we saw during the prompt, when I explained the prompt session, the output format could be very, very simple, very, very simple summary of thousands of documents. And finally, tacit knowledge. So the new models that are coming out are already allowing us to convert voice into text. So you could record all your meetings, convert them into text, and then this text can be captured in a knowledge base. And now suddenly you have access to all the information that has been exchanged in all the meeting in all the company. So for this to work, we have to help generative AI. So for generative AI to help us, we need to help it a little bit. So if you look at from the top left, so this type of text, where you have paragraphs and a lot of text, this is good for generative AI. But then in documents, you also have pictures. And in English, we say a picture is worth 1,000 words. But generative AI, they will tell you, no, give me the 1,000 words. That's more efficient. We also store a lot of information in tables. But generative AI cannot read tables. They only read the row. They don't understand there are columns in the document. So we have to teach it to generative AI. And then in documents, we have footnotes. Then the LLM is like, why did you put it at the bottom of the page? Put it up there where it makes sense. Graphs are also very difficult to explain. Excel files, we start to have good results. Connection to databases, diagrams, blueprints, all this require additional work, so that we can leave the humans alone managing the information the way they like to. And generative AI can do all the curation, all the indexation, all the sorting, and give you a summary of the information that is stored in all these many different formats that we've listed here. So this will help companies solve the knowledge management problem. Through training, you can get yourself and your colleagues to be more efficient task by task, accelerate all your emails, all your reports, summarize long documents, automate some analysis. And then we get to the higher level of productivity when we're talking about workflows. So what do we mean by workflow? We mean a series of steps that are going to leverage different generative AI techniques to go from A to H or from A to M. So here's an example of a production of a white paper from market trends. So first, we're going to get a document. This one is not very long, but we could do it. It's only in 11 pages, but we could do it with a very long document. A very long document on market trends in your industry. In this case, this is about diabetes in China. And then the question I ask the document is, what are the key trends in diabetes treatment? And as you can see, I get a very short summary. I actually should have asked it to give me bullet points, but that's fine. I can make a choice. So I'm not an expert in diabetes, but I'm going to pretend I'm one for the sake of this workflow. So now, as an expert, I'm choosing early diabetes diagnostics. So this will be the topic of my white paper. Next, I'm going to write the outline. So as you see, we're using the RCFC framework at the top. Ask GPT to be an expert in diabetes diagnosis, and then give me an outline for a 5-page white paper. Whenever we go with documents or PowerPoint, we always start with outline for 2 reasons. It works better this way, but most importantly, as an expert, I'm going to change the outline. Maybe there's a point that I don't want to make because it's not interesting to me, and there's a very important point I want to make that is not listed here. So I'm going to massage that outline until I get what I want. Next, I'm going to write the paragraphs one by one. So this is the way we structure a document. First, the outline, and we flesh it out paragraph by paragraph. So in this case, because we don't have our internal knowledge base on diabetes, I rely on Copilot to get general information from the internet. What is very important in internal knowledge management or external knowledge management is that you can see it's underlined and you have those full numbers. So I can always go back to the original website and I can check my sources. Because I'm an expert, I'm going to change that paragraph. I'm going to add the information that is important to me or important to my company. When I do this, I'm going to make spelling mistakes. I never know how to put the half comma in English. So I'm going to use GPT, this one, as proofreading. So I changed the role this time. I'm giving it the paragraph with my addition and my changes. And now I ask it to be a scientific paper proofreader. It's going to correct all my mistakes, make sure that the English is perfect. And now I have my paragraph. So I repeat that for every single part of my outline. And now I have a document with all my content. Next, I want to design a cover. I'm going to use another tool called DALL-E or another image generation. Because this is a creative process, I'm not going to generate one cover. I'm going to generate 6, 10, 20, 50 until I get the one I really like. And finally, I'm going to decide what is my title. A title of a white paper is very important because that's what people are going to click on. So again, this is creative. So I'm not asking for one title. I'm asking for 10 and 10 more, shorter, longer. Don't use this word. So I'm going to shape the title the way I want it. And this is where I say that the creativity is on my side because I'm giving all this feedback and I'm really shaping that. And it's just an acceleration of that production of more ideas. It's more the brainstorming that's come out already fleshed out in a nice looking title. We estimate that with this, we can save 40 to 60%. That's actually how we are doing our white paper these days. Yeah. So we've solved the knowledge management problem. Every single employee in our industry can optimize their individual task. And now we've seen how we can do workflows. Next, to really leverage all the information into the company, there will be a need to integrate the brains with the classic computer. So this is what we call plug in the new tech into the old tech. So your ERP, your CRM, your WMS, whatever old legacy system you have that are not smart, that are not AI powered, there's a need to integrate them because there's still a role for those system of record. And that would be an important part into really bringing AI into companies. So once we've done these 4 things, finally, the very important part and very exciting part, at least my favorite part, comes in. Now, companies who have successfully gone through these 4 steps, they can create new business models. So we take a page from the book of e-commerce. So e-commerce, because there was this technology called internet, and because there are infrastructure companies that have been networks and have brought the internet to everybody's home, Amazon and Alibaba, they could create a business model that was called e-commerce. So the question we have is, now that the models are here, now there is a big cloud infrastructure and NVIDIA is producing GPU as fast as they can, what are the new business model we can build on top of that? And we are looking at it from an angle of non-tech companies. For tech companies, it's relatively easy. I mean, there are new business models and new startups that are coming out that are purely tech related. But what we are interested in is, like, for companies that are non-tech companies, what is the equivalent of e-commerce? So people who were doing traditional retail, they could move to e-commerce, and there was a new source of revenue for them. The same way, what are the new business models that generative AI can open that were not possible 2 years ago? So of course, we're going to use generative AI to generate those new business models. So we look at the e-commerce and we discover there are actually 6 steps to redesign or kind of design backward and then redesign it forward, the e-commerce. So first, we look at the technology enablement. Technology enablement in e-commerce is that the customer can see and evaluate a project that I don't have in my hand. I can just look at it on a website. The barrier that is removed, the business barrier that is removed, is now you can have products that are not stored in a location, downtown, very expensive retail store. You can have it in a warehouse very far away, and you can deliver. And the best candidate, so when Amazon started back in the days, they chose the books because the books were the best target for e-commerce because they had such a large number of unique books, around millions of books, and no store in the US could contain those millions of books and could sell them at the same time. So an e-commerce website on books had a very, very big advantage compared to a physical location because they could sell the 2 million books that were in sales at that time. So if we use the same logic, and this time, as you can see below, we have our prompt that allow us to imagine what is the technology enablement of generative AI for a non-tech company. It is to have every customer have a unique digital experience. So when you prompt GPT, you have an answer. If I prompt GPT, I have a different answer based on my context and my prompt. The barrier that is removed is now you can have VIP service at scale without hiring. If you have twice your number of VIP today in your traditional business, you need twice the number of people to serve them. Now with generative AI, you can serve twice the number of VIP with a unique digital experience without doubling the size of your team. So in the healthcare industry, now we're looking at a best case candidate, and the prompt tells us that one possible option will be personalized medicine at scale without increasing the cost of treatment. Yeah. So let's build this company. So after this free prompt, we have another free prompts that end up into the ability to design a business canvas. So in 6 prompts, people usually do it in 20 minutes the first time they do it. In 20 minutes, you can have one new business model that you want to explore, fully fleshed out, fully filled in the business canvas. And because it takes 20 minutes, and after you do it a few times, you can do it in 10 minutes, you can have 6, 10, 20, 30 ideas that you'll explore in a very short amount of time. And then you can go to your board and you can present the 1 or 2 that seems the best one. It doesn't mean they will all be very success cases. It doesn't mean they are all great ideas. But now, again, because this is a creative process at a strategic level, the quantity will allow you as an expert in your domain to create value and to identify the best one. So in summary, once we've solved knowledge management, we can really empower knowledge workers in their individual task. And then they can move on to more advanced workflow and start to do automation at that stage. We also can plug in all systems so that we get full access to all the company information, including the one stored in legacy system. And once these 4 steps have been passed and successfully implemented, company can start to innovate and can start to put new business model in their own industry as a non-technical company and get market share in new business model that were not possible 2 years ago. Because it's quite challenging, we've developed a methodology that will accelerate the deployment of the first 4 layers that we just saw right now. So we call it the AWESOME methodology for assessment, web app, education, strategy, and then all merge with new. So first, we check the readiness of a company. So in order for a company to fully embrace AI, there needs to be a certain level of digitalization. And then there's a minimum infrastructure to deploy a model that is secure within the company, private cloud or on-premise, access to most employees. And then in this methodology, we train internal champions. So these are business people, non-IT people, non-technology people, but because we're using generative AI, they can learn to control the machine in their own language, in their own native language. The role of this champion will be to train everybody else in the company with a deep understanding of the business and a knowledge of how to leverage the technology. And finally, we get to the strategy piece, which is a little bit weird. Usually, you put strategy and KPI at the beginning of a project. The reason we put it here is because we are convinced that champions in a company will not be able to articulate very clear objectives and KPIs until they fully understand and fully experience the technology. Because this company is new, this technology is new, it's different. It requires hands-on training and experiential learning to really understand what can be done in a specific company, in a specific industry. And finally, we can do the integration now with the legacy system. And at that stage, company will have fully automate one workflow and have a clear roadmap that they can deploy. Right. So thank you for your attention. We have a little bit of time left to answer questions if there were questions in the chat. So do we have any question, Jenny, throughout the presentation?
Yes, I think Lily, she asked, she want to know about a tool that can regarding the long text summary.
Okay, so long text summary, all the LLM can do that. There's only one, I mean, there's a small caveat to that. So different models, they have what is called a window. So in one question and one answer, some of the cheaper model, they have a limited window. That was really true 6 months ago. You couldn't upload a very big text because there was no room for the answer. Now most models, they are close to I think once they pass the 60,000 tokens, which is roughly 40,000 words. That means you can put a quarter of the book. Now we have 250,000 models. So if you really need to summarize a long text, you just, of course, you need to have it in a digital version, of course. You can just copy and paste and put it up there. The other way of doing it, so that's what I explained with knowledge management, is you use generative AI in a knowledge management capacity. And in that case, the very long text becomes the context of what you're trying to do. So then the logic is different. The logic is not like, give me the summary of the text, and then I'm going to write that email. You directly say, okay, this is the text. I want to send an email to my boss with the 5 key points that we need to worry about in this company. And then the LLM will give you directly the email. So you don't even have like summarize, read, and write. You go directly from summary to email or from summary to outline of your white paper. So it's a different way to think about it. But all the modern LLMs, they can summarize text. It comes out of the box. Yeah. Okay. Is there a way to prompt and train LLM so that it can ask us more questions instead of user having to think how to improve that? So it's actually very easy. So when you do a prompt, I explained to you that the prompt could be question and answer. So give me an email, and then you have an email. So you're setting up the context, and you're setting up a one-step task. You can use LM as your coach, actually. So you can give a role to the LM, say, okay, you're going to be my coach, and you're going to help me figure out, I don't know, improve my time management. Okay. So you're an expert in time management using GTD. You're going to ask me, guide me step by step into a process that will help me free out 20% of my time. Okay. Then the LLM will say, okay, I'm going to ask you questions and guide you through those steps. Are you ready? Usually the prompt will say, are you ready? Then you say, yes, I'm ready. And then it will start a dialogue. It will start to ask you questions. And the more questions are being asked and the more answer you give, the more precise things are. And I did an experiment a few weeks ago on a very specific technique that I didn't know. And I could interrupt it at any time. And at one point, but I don't understand the difference between A and B. And then the LLM will give me the difference between A and B. And I said, but is it about the preparation process or the delivery process? He said, no, it's about the preparation process. So you can really set that up. And in that case, you're doing what I say you shouldn't do, you chat, but you chat with a very specific purpose, All right. Any other question? SharePoint information, cleanup, search. Would you have the GUI in SharePoint? Yeah. So Laurence, thank you for your question. I hope one day we can do that. For now, the way we're building it, so we're building a separate web interface, knowing that again, there's a big power into the ability of getting the LLM to execute a task based on the knowledge, on all the knowledge that is being stored. So again, we're not going, we're skipping the middle step of retrieving the information. It's not about give me the 5 documents, I read the documents, I do the summary, and then from the summary, I create my PPT. We want to go directly from use all this knowledge and give me the outline of my PPT, and one day probably the whole PPT. So that wouldn't fit into the search bar of SharePoint. Let's see later on how far we can go, but so far we're getting good results internally into having 3 or 4 steps done as a very simple workflow from a very large knowledge of document that seems to be working pretty well. All right, I think that's all the question. Olivier has raised his hand. Yes, Olivier.
Bonjour. Hi. From Kenya. Sorry, network is quite bad since we've had some riots, so I don't know how I'm doing this call, but I can't chat, so apologies. Quick questions, or actually 2 very short questions. I've read somewhere that when you are prompting a GPT, when you're doing your prompts, the grammar and the number of words don't actually matter. It's really the context of the full sentence. Is there a way for shorthand prompting today? Is that possible already or not yet?
So yes, the context is important. So far, longer prompts perform better because indeed they have longer context. Now, there are a few tricks that you can do. It's called like prompt optimization. And one thing also is you don't need to follow too much of a grammar. Actually, your prompt can be messy. It's one of the advanced productivity trip. You can really type like that. You can make spelling mistakes. It's very, very tolerant to those things. So at the end of the day, I mean, it really depends why you want to save. Do you want to save on tokens or do you want to save on time? I think if you want to save on time, just type as you think. And just make sure you have all the elements inside and make sure that you go really all in on the context. All right. Thank you for your question, Olivier. Alex, are there tools to analyze and summarize audio files? Yes. So uploading a video of a recording. So yes, this is part of what we are doing in knowledge management. We upload video. So far, what we can do with the models that are available, you can upload a video and automatically extract the audio, make the audio into a document, and then index that document with timestamps, so that whenever you go back and you want to look at the video, you can figure out it was in the beginning or the middle or at 10 minutes after the beginning of the meeting. So we are working on this one. And we are building into automating that so that you just upload it from Teams to SharePoint. We're also looking at how we're going to grab it automatically from Teams. But this is indeed a productivity enhancement that we want to invest in. You have to keep in mind that the answer I'm giving you today may be different in 3 weeks. Things are moving really, really fast. We want to keep up. So thank you very much, everybody. We're getting to the end of that webinar. Thank you for your attention, and then keep a lookout from our emails. We're going to start a new series of webinars. So we're doing this one for the last time, but we want to zoom in on some of those topics later on. And we're gonna produce and publish in our newsletter that is coming out soon the new webinars, the new topics that we want to dig in. Thank you for joining us today. Bye bye.